Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to the Jim and Kyle Fantasy Football Extraordinaire, episode 2. Kyle, my co-host, partner in crime here. How's it going?
Going okay. Lost in the league. Packers lost. Things could be better, but overall, life's good.
And the Packers kind of lost two ways. That injury.
Almost three ways, because now we're last in the division too. Everyone else managed to squeak out a win. Even the Bears, who can't even score an offensive touchdown, managed to get a win.
Reddit was having a lot of fun with that. All three fan bases all agree the Packers are the most hated, so they were enjoying it. There's a subreddit I'm subscribed to that's literally just meant for like posting memes for the NFC North, and it was just all anti-Packers stuff and just laughing at the Packers. So yeah, the other teams were very happy to see that.
Yeah, NFC North meme war. Yeah, I love that
Oh
subreddit.
yeah,
It's a good time in there.
that's
But yeah, there's Packers are getting shit on right now.
win or
It's
lose, it's always fun in there.
oh yeah, it's funny anyways. Yeah, let's get this thing kicked off properly.
All right.
So we're gonna start this week with just going over some injuries. We already kind of mentioned one, Jordan Love, MCL. I mean, I think most Packer fans were actually happy when this news came out because it looked bad and it looked like the season might be donezo. But just MCL. I think last time they talked to LaFleur, he said they're not even technically ruling him out for this Sunday, which sounds absolutely ridiculous. I think they're saying 3 to 6 weeks is the normal MCL.
Yeah, they didn't put him on IR, and I think what IR is a minimum of 4 weeks. So the fact that they put him on IR, I feel like they think he's coming back in 1 to 3. I think when they go into these injuries and they're like, "Oh, he might be playing next week," that's mostly just gamership, I think, between the coaches and their team. So they're just trying to make it so they think Jordan Love's going to play, so they feel like they get a competitive advantage. I don't think anyone expects him to play, even the opposing. Yeah, I think we're going to miss him for 1 to 3 weeks, and then hopefully he can come back and be fully healthy. Because sometimes when you come back with an injury like that, it lingers, and then you tear it the next time.
Yeah,
Hopefully,
I hope
they take
they're
the time.
I hope they're conservative with it. Love is more of a pocket passer though. He's not a super mobile guy anyways, so I assume they'll wait till he's back, and it's gonna kind of come down to how the backup's doing too. I think if it looks unwinnable with him, they they might try to get him back early. Because if you start the season 0-4 or 0-5 because he misses 4 weeks, that's a hole that's hard to get out of.
Absolutely.
Uh, Next up, Josh Allen had a hand injury. This is not throwing hand though, and he finished the game with it. I suspect that's going to be a complete non-issue. He does play Thursday night though, but I can't imagine he doesn't play.
Yeah, they already basically said he's fine, so I don't think there's
Yeah.
much to worry about there. The main reason of who he was, if it was a lower name player, he probably wouldn't right now. Josh Allen.
Yeah. We got Devon Achane of the Dolphins limped off the field. They also played Thursday night, so that one's kind of iffy. I got one more day from the time of recording, see if he plays or not. Might want
And
to
the other
prepare
with
for a
them,
backup if he's your starter.
well, that's the thing is Mostert is hurt too, and I think Mostert's the one that's expected to actually miss a couple games. So Achan, from what I heard, he's gonna play. So he should get a full workload. I mean, there's no one else there behind him, so hopefully he's fully healthy. So he could be a
They've
really
got
big.
they've got Jeff Wilson, and I think they drafted another guy too. So there are some other guys there, and it's a good system. So if Achan and Mostert are out, someone might get a lot of points over there. And
Yeah,
it's not like Achan's been a pillar of health at all. He's missed a ton of time already in his very short career.
yeah, that was my concern in the draft with him. Is like great talent, but I mean, he's injured all the time, and then yeah, he's already injured week one.
Yeah, that's rough for an early round pick. Next up we got Jordan Addison. Sounds like he's gonna ankle sprain. Probably miss 2 to 4 weeks. That's what I got down here.
I didn't really hear much about that one. I thought wasn't he like supposed to be suspended too? Did he like not get suspended?
I didn't know Addison was getting suspended.
I thought there was something,
Fir-
but anyway,
First I've heard of it.
the injury is the thing that really matters right now. And yeah, out for a couple weeks. I mean, he was not drafted as like a top tier player, but I mean, he's still someone you weren't counting on.
He was probably in a starting lineup. I'd almost guarantee it. Um, Next up we got Puka. He's definitely was in someone's starting lineup. He hurt his knee. When I wrote this up, I didn't see yet, but I think they put him on IR. Is that correct? Do you
Yeah,
know?
so he's on
Yeah,
IR now, and they're saying it might be longer than 4 games, so he's going to be out for a while, I think. So he's the first big injury of the fantasy season. If you picked him, like you're hurting right now because he would have probably been your number one, number two receiver, and you're going to probably miss him for at least 4 games, maybe closer to 6. I'm not sure where their bye lines up, but that's typically what teams will do is they'll wait till their bye. If it's pretty close, hold them out for another week. Then you get that bye week, and then they come back after that. So if their bye week's like week 6, 7, you might be seeing.
yeah. That's half the season at that point. We half the fantasy season, anyways.
Yep.
Um, yeah, that's a painful one. I mean, IR is not quite what it used to be. I think it's only 4 games is the minimum they can be on it now. Or yeah, you have to be at least
You
four
have to
weeks,
at
I think.
least be 4 games when
Yeah,
you come back. So most players are gone for like 5 games because they'll come back and
yeah. It
hopefully
used
beat
to
up.
be 8 weeks though, didn't it? If you were on the IR, I
I think
swear it
that
used
was
to be way
before, it
longer.
used to be not at all, and then I think, yeah, they made it like 8 games, and then they changed it to 4 or something.
Yeah,
There's been a bunch of changes with it recently. They settled on the 4 game for a while
yeah.
now.
I mean, either way, Puka out at least 4 weeks. Quite possibly, like you said, they'll leave him out until after the bye. So your Puka owner, that sucks. If you're a Cup owner, you're you're cheering for joy because man, that guy had a lot of targets week 1, and he's probably gonna have a monster season or a monster half season until Puka comes back.
He's injury prone himself, so we'll see if he can hold up.
That's that's true. Hopefully, he can survive the beating. Because man, yeah, what do you have like 20 some targets that game? That was insane.
He had
Like for
14
an old
catches.
man.
I mean, a lot of it I think was game plan because they knew the Lions pass rush was pretty good. They were down 2 offensive tackles, so they were running a lot of quick outs with him and just trying to get him the ball quick. Because he had 14 catches and barely broke like 10 yards per catch, which is typically,
Yeah.
short stuff, stinking and dunking. So they might not be the most valuable targets, and I think it is somewhat matchup dependent against the Lions. But yeah, he's going to look to be a pretty big asset over the next couple of months.
Next one I got up, Njoku, tight end for the Browns. He hurt his ankle. Uh, yeah, I didn't see how long he's gonna miss.
I heard
I
it
don't know
was a
if they
game to
said
game
anything.
thing or
Is
week
that
to
what it
week.
is?
So I mean, he might be back this week. It might be next week. It could be 2 weeks.
Yeah,
It's one of those things. They don't really slot information on it.
yeah. I mean, he stunk anyways. All the tight ends stunk this week.
Right.
There was no good tight end performance across the board. So if you feel like your tight end sucked this week, don't feel too bad because they all did. Um, and then we got the other injury. I guess it's worth mentioning. A guy Christian McCaffrey. He missed last week and quite possibly will miss next week.
I
I
mean,
don't
that's
know if
going to
that
be.
affects anyone's roster in this league.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone has McCaffrey on their team. You're not. Oh, okay. But yeah, he's the big talk of the fantasy season. Him and Puka Nakua. I mean, those are the players. There's always a couple players in the beginning of the year that you're just like they get injured, they start slow because of injuries, and it can tank your season, honestly. So hopefully for Lee, he can manage it, and then McCaffrey comes back only after missing 2 games because I think he's already been ruled out for Sunday, or it's at least very, very likely he's going to be out this Sunday. So you're missing your first 2 games with the best player in fantasy football. And the fact that they mentioned that it was tendonitis and he also had a calf injury or hamstring thing going on too, it's like those are the type of things that you hear, and then the next thing you know is that they're out for the season after their first game because they come back and they tweak something or they go out for another couple weeks. So it's a big concern right now.
It's the whole thing is it, the Niners and Shannon have been so shady with this whole thing. It's really weirding me out, and it would worry me extremely if I was a McCaffrey owner because I didn't even say he was out for week 1. And then after Jordan Mason had that game, they interviewed him. He said he knew he was the starter on Friday, so the organization knew that he wasn't going to be playing, but didn't release that information to anybody, which ticks off the NFL. So they might be getting fined, and now they're kind of being real shady with what's going to happen next week too. Same thing. They're asking, is he going to play? And he's like, oh, we don't know. It's a game time decision. But last week obviously was not a game time decision, despite what they were saying. So I'm kind of curious how this one plays out.
Yeah, and they even said like he could have played if it was a playoff game, but then he's going to miss week 2. To me, that doesn't line up. Like if he could have played if it was a playoff, okay, he was probably like a day or two away from being able to play, and they just wanted to take precautionary measures. And now it's like, yeah, he's not going to play next week probably. Yeah, who knows what's going on there?
Yeah, we'll see. It's just a wait and see thing. I think that's about it for the injuries. Anything else you know of that I don't know of?
No, I think you pretty much hit on all the players
Okay.
we need to talk about.
That's all the big ones. So that's it for injuries. On to the next segment, just kind of the week one headlines. What happened in the NFL this week? I mean, the big one is Dak Prescott getting his bags and bags of money. He's getting 60 million a year? Is that the number?
I don't
Two-
know the number offhand. I know he's the number one paid quarterback or number one paid player of all time, which, until 2 weeks from now, until someone else takes that, like it always happens in the NFL. But yeah, Dallas ended up paying him this time, not holding him out for a year or two to give him his money. So Dak's sitting pretty right now. I don't know if it's necessarily worth it as far as like, is he the best quarterback in the league? No, but that's just how the league works. The next man up gets the big contract, and you just keep going down the list, and one's generally got their time for a week, couple months as the number one paid player in the league at that position, and then move on to the next one.
This one will last a while because the season started now, and everyone that needed to get paid in the offseason got paid. So I assume it will be the next offseason. Someone will break the record.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Um, I don't know who's up for next year, but it's pretty likely someone will break it again. Other week one headlines. I kind of mentioned it. Tight end stunk this week. Um, if you drafted one of the high ones, you're kind of kicking yourself because you didn't get anything more than the guy who, waited till round 15 to grab a shitty tight end.
Yeah,
Kind of the way it rolls.
Likely was a big one, right? I mean, he's a backup to Andrews, so it's like no one really expected that to happen. Um, Tight ends in general are kind of hit and miss anyway. It's not like a number one receiver, even if they're as good as Kelsey. They don't always produce game to game. I mean, Kelsey's the only one really that was like consistent game to game. I think
And he
Andrews
didn't
average,
do it either.
right. I mean, Andrews average is only like 50 yards a game. So, I mean, it's one of those things that they're going to eventually blow up and have some big weeks. But overall, yeah, the tight end position was probably the biggest outlier this week. Positions go.
Yeah, it was an interesting one. I mean, usually at least a couple guys have a good game, but yeah, like you said, it was Isaiah Likely. The one guy probably not started anywhere, even if he was rostered in some leagues. Uh, Other week one stuff. We got Joe Burrow and the Bengals looking like they're just a hot garbage team this year. What do you think's going on over there in Cincinnati?
Um, I mean, they have a lot of injuries already, which is the other big thing with the NFL this year. It seems like a lot of teams like just multiple players injured in the start of the season. I don't know if that's just teams just trying to slowly get into the year and they're just being more precautionary with some of these things. But you got to realize, like Joe Burrow, he just came back from a big injury last year. They have T. Higgins out. Jamar Chase had the holdout, so he wasn't really fully ready to go. They no longer have Mixon. They have two kind of pretty average
Not as
running backs
good.
behind him, and the whole offense kind of changed. And Joe Burrow is still probably trying to get back to full health, and then you don't have your number two receiver, and then your number one receiver probably wasn't ready to play a full game. So I'm gonna hold my judgment on the Bengals. Let's see another week or two. They're kind of notorious for having slow starts anyway. The last 2 years, I think they started out with like losing records after the first 4 or 5 weeks, and then eventually turn it on near the end of the season.
Yeah, it's not uncommon for them to start slow. I will say though, like there is like in the back of my mind, there's like the thought that maybe Joe Burrow is just not that great. Like he gets injured all the time, so it's hard to say. But like I feel like a lot of it's just he had that one good season and he beat the Chiefs and Mahomes in the playoffs that one year, so everyone's like he's got to be good.
I mean, I'm gonna say he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I
Think
love
so?
watching him play. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the injuries are definitely a concern. This is his second big injury in his very short career, but when it comes to just accuracy, he doesn't even have the biggest arm, but when it comes to accuracy, there's not many quarterbacks who throw better than him. He can just pretty much do everything. He's athletic enough to get around pressure and then roll out and throw on the run, but he's like just that cerebral play to play quarterback, take it under center, 2, 3 step drop, and just hit guys in stride. And he's also got a very big gunslinger mentality, even though he doesn't have the arm of like a Mahomes or a Stafford or anything like that. But like he's got enough to at least pretty much make every throw. So I love him. I think he's a great player.
Yeah, I'm not saying I legitimately think that, but it's kind of rumbling around my head like there's a chance that's what's going on.
I
We'll
mean,
we'll
the
check
Bengals.
back in 5 years. Hopefully he's duking it out and we have a good rivalry between him and Mahomes or something. But
Yeah.
time will tell.
See.
Step one is stay healthy for the whole season. What else we got? Another week one headline is Marvin Harrison, rookie wide receiver for the Cardinals, very highly drafted, highest drafted rookie in fantasy football of all time. Comes out and lays a stinker. Gets one catch, I think, is what he had. I mean, it was a bad game. Think
Oh,
he's not ready for the NFL, or I think it was just a weird game for him.
uh, I think it's a combination of things. So I like to read about things in the NFL. I have a person I like to follow. His name is Matt Waldman. He's a kind of like a scout, but he's a internet scout. NFL teams actually go to him for advice. He does this portfolio thing and he follows the draft very closely. Only the offensive players, because I think it kind of started because of a fantasy thing. He's been doing fantasy or like podcasting for 20 plus years. He's an older guy, but he's brilliant. I was reading his column today because he does like a column every Monday, and he kind of broke down the film on Harrison and the whole Kyler Murray situation. And the way he kind of explained it is that they didn't really run route tree for Marvin to really take advantage of him. And the way Kyler was playing was kind of more like hero ball, which, and I'm very overgeneralizing these things. This guy really breaks it down in terms that even I have a hard time understanding. But really, the whole hero ball thing, he was just holding the ball too long, not really catching Hart Harrison like at the top of his route where he was kind of open. And then again, the route tree was pretty limited. They were doing a lot of dinking and dunking, keeping stuff short, and then a lot of Harrison routes were deeper shots, and Murray wasn't really giving him the time to get open on those routes. So I don't know if maybe it was just Murray being a little too excited for his first game back. And then on top of it, it sounded like Harrison just didn't get open as you would expect the player of his caliber to. So I don't think he got as many throws going his way just because he wasn't getting open. A lot to find out, but I think a lot of it comes down to just it's a rookie in the NFL. It's hard to make a big impact. A lot of times we get over excited for these guys and don't understand that, they're still rookies. They take time to adjust.
Not an easy game. Yeah. But yeah, there's been breakout rookies more and more. So yeah, I think he just this was the year people finally got overhyped on the rookie. He might still have a good season. I wouldn't be surprised by it. But yeah, it's a rough start if you drafted him, in the second round as your probably wide receiver one. Um, my next highlight of the week one is Saquon Barkley. Might be he might be the running back to own this year. He might be the McCaffrey this year. God, he looked good. Um, I Jalen Hurts, I didn't look that great. I didn't think the receiving game looked that great, but man, Barkley looked like a terror out there. I don't know if it's maybe the Packers defense just still stinks. Maybe they're still awful, but man, he was running at will, and it was not fun as a Packer fan to watch that game. But if you're a Barkley owner, it was probably pretty fun to watch your fantasy score just start cranking up into the air like that.
Yeah, I think you would know the best. I mean, how was Jackie doing with that? I mean, she's probably screaming at the TV and then cheering right afterwards.
Yeah, I mean we've all been there in fantasy, right? You got the
Sure.
guy against your team, and you're like, God, this is good and bad, and I don't know how to feel about it.
But I mean, when it comes down to Barkley, I think people really, really took too much stock into him being a little bit older and the fact that he wasn't performing the best on a terrible Giants team that has no good blocking. I think everyone I always kind of knew Barkley's one of the most talented players in the league. Just kind of bottled up in New York, and it felt like the fantasy season flipped on it. It was like, oh no, he might just be old and has lost a step. The injuries have caught up to him. It's like, no, I never saw it. I think I even said on the last podcast that he was favorite players in the draft this year. The only reason I did not take him, even though I liked him more than Chase on like an individual level, was because I just liked the second round running backs more than the receivers. So I was trying to figure out what was the best receiver running back combo I can get in the first two rounds instead of like who was the best player I could get at my first pick. And that was just maybe a mistake after seeing Berkeley week one, but I'm not surprised at all. I mean, there was times where he just made people look silly in the backfield, got him close when he got on the edge. You know, he still has like 4.3 speed. You can't just take him down with arm tackles because he's still like 220 pounds. You're talking about one of the biggest, strongest, fastest, and most agile players in the league. And when he's connecting on all cylinders, he's honestly, I think he's even more talented than McCaffrey on an individual level. And I think you might be seeing the start of
Yeah,
Barkley.
he's a little younger than McCaffrey too. They both kind of been beaten up over their careers, and yeah, they both kind of had that run of being on a shitty offense for a while. McCaffrey still made things happen when he was on the Panthers, but yeah, I don't know. That offense with a running back like that is they could really do some damage this year. Maybe they'll be an actual legitimate playoff team again this year. I had my doubts. I still have my doubts about them because I don't trust Jalen Hurts that much. He makes such weird throws sometimes. Like he should have got picked off like 4 times in that game. He got pretty lucky on some of those. Um, but yeah, when you can give it to a running back that often and they just produce constantly, it makes it hard to beat.
With the field, I think they just said, screw it. Let's just
Yeah,
give it to
run the
Barkley.
ball.
He's making people miss. Don't put anyone else in harm's way. I think that's why a lot of the passes were missed by by Hertz and Love. I think the field was just throwing off their timing. Players were slipping. They weren't getting in their sets as well as they probably should have. And yeah, I think that's one.
Yeah, it's hard to run a route if you can't cut properly. So yeah, I get it. Another week one headline that I got here. This one's near and dear to you. Amon-Ra St. Brown, first round pick, just absolute stud wide receiver last year. Kind of was on the backseat to Jamison Williams in the Lions opener this year. I mean, one guy produced and one guy it did not. Think it's a random thing, or you think there's something going on here?
I don't think anything's going on. I think it's the way to try to beat the Lions. It's a very similar blueprint that the Ravens showed last year against the Lions, where we're the strongest is in the middle of the field in the short to intermediate routes, and that's where Goff is at his best. That's where Porta's at his best, and that's where Amon Ra is at his best. If you can take away those guys, we need to beat you in some other way. And the way you beat that is you go over the top of it. And that's why I think you saw that JMO had such a good game was just because they were focusing solely on Amon-Ra St. Brown. They were focusing on Porta, and they were trying to take away that middle of the field, and they were begging for JMO to beat them. And he proved very shortly that you can't one-on-one cover him. And we saw White, and he put the double move on him. He tried to grab his shoulder to get past interference because he knew he was beat, and he knew that was going to be 6, and he couldn't even catch him. So within a couple seconds, he was in arm's reach away from him. Probably one of the most disgusting double routes I've seen in a long time. It was just ridiculous. So I think that's why, for one, JMO had such a big game, and I think why Amon Ra had a poor game. I think they really focused on taking that away, and the Lions said, "Whatever, you can take that away, and then we will beat you with our other options." And Amon Ra at the same time didn't really have his A+ game. I think he played at a lower level. There was a pass that Jared Goff threw that got picked off. Amon Ra didn't really fight for it like he normally does. He kind of seemed a little off. So maybe it was just week one jitters, and we'll probably see a better Amon Ra moving forward.
Yeah, it's hard to judge week one performances these days because nobody play. I don't know if the Lions did, but I feel like no one plays in the preseason anymore. So week one's almost like a, the preseason game almost. Like these guys aren't firing on full cylinders.
Yeah,
And it
and the
kind of showed in
Lions.
the NFL this year. Like I think the touchdowns were down like 20, like 20 less touchdowns this year than last year's week one opener.
Oh,
It's
really?
just yeah, there's a lot less scoring.
I mean, I'm guessing not surprised. Most of the games are low scoring, and I think that does come back to, like you said, there's just teams are not practicing as much in live situations. So before it used to be the first week or two that it took teams to adjust. Maybe we're gonna have to see like 3 or 4 weeks now, just because.
Yeah, well, especially if they cut preseason even shorter. But like I said, I mean the starters don't play in preseason anyways. It's like the final tryouts. But yeah, we'll see how that shakes out. I mean, I think Amon-Ra is still going to be awesome. I would not overreact to that at all if I was the owner. Jameson Williams looked promising though. I mean, he didn't have a lot of catches, but man, when he gets the catches, they're big. He can have some big weeks. Their running backs looked good too. They were, especially in the overtime. Overtime, just giving the ball to Montgomery every play was pretty entertaining to watch. Honestly,
Did you
I'm not a Montgomery owner this year, but I think I was last year in the league, and he was awesome. He was awesome all year. Just hand it to him, run up the middle, and get 4 or 5 yards every time.
yeah,
It was
he's the closer.
yeah, apparently he
Did you
closed it well.
did you see the text I sent with the image of Dan Campbell? And he kind of has like this half-ass grin.
Yeah,
That
I've
was
seen that popping
literally
up around.
after they won the coin flip for overtime.
Oh,
That was
okay.
a picture of him. That guy knew what was about to happen.
Yeah.
I think they knew the Rams were gassed. I think they knew that Montgomery, who wasn't really running as much earlier because they were kind of in a position where they weren't able to play Montgomery as much as Jameer because they were behind and they needed to
hmm
score quick. So I think they knew that they were gassed and they were just going to be able to run it right down their throats. And that was his face. So if any man knew what was about to happen, he knew he just won the game on that coin flip.
Yeah. Well, he was right. It was pretty. That was a pretty simple looking march down the field, if I've ever seen one.
I was a very happy person
Yeah, I
growing.
believe it. I thought you guys were losing that game. I mean, for the first 3 quarters, I was like, they're fucked, but they pulled it together. Got the win. That was a good game. That was a good week 1 game. There were actually a lot of good week 1 games.
They fucked. Yeah.
One that wasn't was the Panthers. They're they have any chance of winning more than 5 games this season?
I mean, to be fair, I don't know enough about their team to really make a strong judgment on a whole season, but I mean, it's hard to not look at their last year and the start of this season and think that they're not the worst, if not one of the top like 3 worst teams at this point. I don't think Bryce Young is looks legitimate at this point. I think the height is really causing some issues. He made some good throws, there's maybe some things they can do to get some success out of him, but I think you're looking at the next real big bust in NFL history is what I'm thinking. And have that and you put so much resources into a player like that, and you kind of have to, right? You have to see if they can do it.
Yeah,
But
you got to try for it.
he might if, at this point he is not it, and I think it's gonna be a rough season for the Panthers, and I would imagine they're looking at maybe having the number if
Yep. Rebuild right after the rebuild. It's always painful, but I mean it happens. It's just funny that the Panthers they traded away so much to get Bryce Young. One of the things they traded away wound up being Caleb Williams, who they could have drafted this last season and started with him. But they also had Baker Mayfield on their team 2 years ago, and they just they traded him. They just let him walk away.
they released him.
Now he's on Tampa Bay looking like a legitimate quarterback again.
Yeah. I,
And it said they went all in with this guy, and he looks vastly inferior to Baker Mayfield right now. And it's year 2 already.
and that maybe if Baker fell in there wasn't really a Baker thing, it was an organization, it was a team thing.
It
So
might have been.
just proving that there's just flaws with how they are building that team.
Yeah. And Baker never really failed on the Browns either. They just kind of let him go. It, they paid Deshaun Watson stupid money, still paying him stupid money, and just kind of let Baker go.
His whole
Yeah,
thing was an injury. I think they just over put too much stock in the injury, and I think maybe they felt that they were just quarterback away. Maybe they still like Baker, but they felt, hey, if we can upgrade, we might as well. And then they went for the number 1 pedophile in NFL history, and
hmm
I shouldn't say pedophile,
yeah,
sex.
not pedophile.
But
Let's not just go calling people pedos around here.
hey, he probably
He's
deserves
just
it.
a serial sexual assaulter.
Hey, he's already got another case, and they're going to be investigating it, so he might not be
Yeah, that
around for
one's
much longer.
interesting. That might actually get the Browns out of their predicament.
There's
If
rumors that
if
it's been
if the
manufactured.
Texans had known about it when they did the did they trade him?
Yeah, it
I
was
don't know.
traded.
I heard there might be like a clause that they can get out of it if there was something that was known about but wasn't they weren't informed of that could be coming up.
Yeah,
Um,
like I said, sounds like they think there's rumors that the Browns maybe planted information to try to get out of it. Like they know it's that bad, and they're trying to get out of the $200 million they owe that man because right now it's fully guaranteed. So technically, he owes to them.
Yeah, it was a bizarre contract to put a guy on, knowing he was almost for sure going to get suspended for an entire season, and you're going to pay him for that season.
And that's why they also structured the contract the way they did. So year one was $1 million. So all he lost was 1 million. So he got
Yeah.
all the money. I think honestly, the Browns deserve everything that's coming to them. I feel sorry for their fans because that's got to be the worst thing ever. But as far as the owner, people that signed off on that, they deserve everything that's coming to them.
Oh yeah. I mean, you get what you pay for, and you paid for a sexual assaulter to come play. I don't even know if Deshaun Watson's trying to be good anymore, or if he's just like, I got my money and I don't really care.
What does
Because
he
it
have
sure
to
doesn't
play
look
for?
like he's trying to be good. He does not look good at all.
He has nothing to play for. He's already got the bag.
Yeah,
Like, what does he really? Everyone hates him. He knows it. He's never going to change that. I
true.
mean, he probably wants to get all the spotlight as soon as possible so he can just go on and sit on $200 million in some beach somewhere.
You could
That's
be
what I
right.
would do if I was in his
Just fade
position.
fade into the background, and in 5 years, how many people are gonna recognize you anymore? You'll just be a
Right.
millionaire.
And I'm sure
That,
walking down the streets right now, being famous like that for knowing what you did, I imagine he gets a lot of shit, and it's hard to
hmm
be him today. Which, again, I'm glad that people put him through.
Self-imposed.
Yeah, he deserves it.
hmm what about you? Any week one highlights? Anything you're
Well,
happy about or
the most
disappointed in?
and this is more personal for me, so it's not really something for everyone to listen to. But I mean, I was losing to Mike going into that Lions game, and I had Montgomery and Williams to go. I think I was projected to lose by 15 points. He had Laporta on his team. So, I mean, the ESPN stats said I was going to lose that by like 15 points. My team underperformed. And then that game started. And within like the first half, I was projected to win. And I was just having the best time of my life, coming back in fantasy after what looked like was going to be a dead week. And then watch the Lions come back and win a incredibly exciting game. And then to be validated on Jamison Williams and everything I thought about him in his first game already. So I'm feeling great about it. That was my biggest highlight.
Yeah, that's great when that lines up. You get to cheer for your own team
Right.
and cheer for your fantasy victory. All then it all lines up perfectly. I think that's why Packer players always go a little bit earlier in our drafts, because it's fun when that happens.
You
Like, oh
mentioned it
yeah,
last week on the podcast. Fantasy football is meant to be fun. You want to
yeah,
own players that are fun. And then what's more fun than owning some of your favorite players on your own team?
yep,
Watching
yep,
them be
exactly.
successful. That's literally why we play this.
Uh, any big disappointments? Or did we go through them all already?
Pretty much went through them. I
Okay.
believe that, it's one of those things. I think the biggest disappointment was just week overall wasn't that exciting. I mean, there was a couple good games, but I mean, there was a lot of just bad football. And I think, we lose as fans until later in the season when these teams really start to iron out their kinks and really start to gel. But the first couple weeks, it's a tough watch. There's so many mistakes, and I don't. I didn't really enjoy the games I was watching that were not as compelling.
The primetime games I thought were all pretty good. Thursday Night Football was good. Um, Speaking of Thursday Night Football, didn't we have a bet on that game?
We did.
Yep, yep,
Um,
yep.
do you want to use that as your segue?
Yeah, that'll transition us perfectly into it. Yeah,
All
you
right.
you thought the Ravens would finally get one over on the Chiefs, but not yet. They'll have to
I
wait for the playoffs to get another chance at that now.
Yeah, I love the Ravens this year. Honestly, I feel like the Lions are going.
I can't hear you. I think you need to get closer to the mic.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
I think the bottle was in front of the mic, so
Oh, that could have been it.
it was like diverting it
Yeah,
around. So
I saw your mouth moving, but I was like, I hear nothing. Okay.
all right, but yeah, I really like the Ravens. The Lions are still my favorite team to win the Super Bowl. Big surprise there, but the Ravens were the team I was picking number 2. So I will take my punishment. I have my nice little shot glass here. Old Phoenix Suns logo.
I got a
Back
new
in the
one.
Charles Barkley days. One
Nice.
of my favorite players of all time. I love me some Chuck. But
You love him as
this
a
is a
commentator too.
nice bottle. It's still brand new, not cracked open. All right. So we can do a little ASMR here and have the little crack.
Oh yeah, picked it up.
Oh,
You got it.
see? Oh man, we're making some ASMR
He's
profit
opening
now.
a fresh bottle of Malort, in case anyone didn't listen to last week and wants to know what he's about to drink.
I have never had this. Kyle told me this is one of the worst shots ever. In fact, it's made to be awful. Has the aroma and full-bodied flavor of an unusual botanical. Its bitter taste is savored by two-fisted drinkers. Oh, it's nice here down in Chicago, Illinois. Nothing about
Product
this
of Chicago.
is going to be good in my opinion. So, nice shot. Here's my punishment, and you'll get my live reaction to this.
Yeah, cheerio.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. That's not gonna go away for like 5 to 10 minutes either.
oh, it's got a
It just lingers.
lingers.
Oh, it lingers. You can chase it, but it ain't going anywhere.
All I have is water,
That
so
lasts.
I don't think it's gonna chase much of anything. It's not gonna take away. Oh,
Yeah.
that is.
Yeah. The shot's not bad. It's that lingering effect that lasts for like 5 minutes. That's bad.
I mean, I haven't really taken many shots. I was actually talking to Vicky about that today. I'm like, you kind of have to be taking shots regularly to be used to it. That like real
Mm-hmm.
punch that they have. I mean, I don't really drink anything. I used to drink whiskey and scotch when I was younger, but now it's like I haven't had like a legitimate shot other than probably like Jaeger bombs in years. So that was one of my first in a long time. And oh, I can still taste, like you said, that bitterness that keeps coming back, and it's like almost like a.
Yeah. It kind of sits in the back of your throat, just like
But then it
it
comes back
lingers.
out a little bit. It like kind of
Yeah.
goes in and out and in and out. Like you kind of forget about it, and then you're like, oh, it's there. Oh, now we'll see if this
Yeah.
keeps going on. This is not the most pleasant.
It's a punishment shot. Like I said, Teebs likes it. I've never met any other person ever that likes it. I'm gonna grab a beer real quick.
See if the water helps. I mean, for the moment, it did. I mean, it is a sparkling water, so maybe the kind of
Maybe the carbonation will help.
yeah.
All I can say is good luck with that. I've never found anything to get rid of it.
Well, thank you for my first shot of.
Yeah. We haven't bet on anything this week yet. We'll have to find something in here.
We'll find something.
So there's the bet results from last week / Jim's punishment. Yeah, don't lose the bet again if you don't want to do that. I got myself a bottle too, so if I lose, I'll be right there with you, suffering for those 5-10 minutes.
I'm not going to join you if you lose. You can do that by yourself.
Oh yeah.
You don't wish to
Well,
participate.
you'll join me for the podcast, not for the shot. Okay, so next up we have got. Let's talk about waiver wire FAAB here real quick. FAAB money is only good for the year, and it's more valuable at the start of the year, in my opinion. I'm just bringing this up because I feel like last year people seem to be like saving it. And there's nothing wrong with saving it, but you're more likely, and I say this at my own detriment because I benefited greatly last year from people not spending early. That's how I wound up with Puka Nakua. That's how I got HN. Like I feel like people were very conservative with their money early on. Early on is when breakout players show up. Generally, you might find, week 10, you might find a player that someone gets injured, next guy steps in, he's really good. It happens, but you're more likely to find players early on, and they're more valuable if you get them early on. Because if you get someone week 1, you can play them week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5, week 6. If you're waiting until week, 8 to drop a bunch of your FAAB on a guy, and he might be good down the stretch, but you're only getting him for week 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. You get half the value versus what someone that pays early for. So just kind of wanted to kick that out there to everybody that listens to this, that don't. I mean, I'm not saying blow $100 on a guy you like week 1, but don't play super conservative with it because it's there to be spent. It's gone at the end of the year, whether you spend it or not. Um, Anything to add to this? I just wanted to put that public service message out there, kind of.
I think those are good points. One of the things about just free agency in general, and I think it's something that everyone can work on, this might help them pay and use their fab more, is that you got to use it to complement your roster. You got to find ways to look at the, couple weeks down the road too. You're not always just trying to find players for that you're playing. There's players that might be backups to a good running back, or maybe a guy that you just saw play, and maybe he didn't get a whole lot of carries. Maybe he got play at the end of the game of a starter got injured, but it was like a concussion. He's gonna be back next week. Those guys end up being valuable, especially if it's like a player like we got with McCaffrey right now, who's got a big injury concern. Sometimes you want to have those guys backups, and then you have the ability to, he does get injured, replace him with his backup. And those are the type of guys you want to look for. And then once you get further into the season, you're going to be having situations where some of these players already on your team aren't performing, and you need to find other players to replace them to give yourself more chances to have a player that might impact your season positively. And I think a lot of people just kind of sit on the team they're drafted with, and they never want to move off of their players because it's like the fear of that they might be good, if you drop them. And you got to get that out of your head. You just got to make the best decision for your team at the time, but also with some intention of, the future. And that's one of the big deals with free agency in general. And I believe when you're sitting there and you're holding on to your fab, it probably means you're not building that bottom of your roster. You should be turning out probably the last 3, 4 players on your roster, especially with us having a bigger bench, maybe every week or two.
Yeah, yeah. Drop the guys that aren't doing anything. I'm sure everyone. Well, I shouldn't say everyone. The vast majority of the people in this league probably have someone on their bench that they drafted. As a flyer. Week 1 happened. They got either no targets or a 5% share of the running back room, and could that change week 2? Maybe, but when it's that low, sometimes you just cut bait and say, all right, it's not worth holding on to this person. I thought something might happen. It didn't. Cut bait, move on. Try to get someone that did get some sort of play time.
Every week you get new data points. Use
Mm-hmm.
them to your advantage and make the best decision off those points. Don't have sunken cost fallacy where you're worried about things you put into the player. Once the draft is over, where you draft that player doesn't matter. Their values are completely different now after
Yep.
the draft. Play accordingly, and find players that help your team, that help complement your team. If you have a lot of receivers, you need some running backs, focus on getting some running backs. Maybe you're one running back injury away from not having a legitimate starter to play each week. You need to probably be looking at the free agents out there right now. Find guys that might be able to start for you week 4, 5, and 6 that probably don't play right now, but in those weeks, if you're ahead of the curve, you don't have to pay the full budget. If one of the starters goes down and his backup is going to be the obvious starter and he's in free agency, he's probably going to go for $60 to $70 just because that's a starter later in the season, or even like the early part of the season. If you know for sure you're getting a starter, people are going to pay a lot for them because that is the player that makes and breaks your team.
Yeah. I feel like that's hard nowadays. Like when starters go down, it's always like which running backs up, and most of the time I feel like it's one of these two guys, and it might be both, and they both might suck. Um, Once in a while, you do get a guy like Jordan Mason this week. Like, oh, McCaffrey's down. Jordan Mason's the dude. He's not splitting carries with anybody. He's he's just walking right into that same role of 85% of the snaps are his.
Let's go on a hypothetical. Let's just say McCaffrey was injured for the whole season right now. Jordan Mason was the one running back out there. Everyone in the league should put $100 at him.
Oh, if he's gonna play the rest of the season, yes,
If he was,
absolutely.
yeah, McCaffrey was out the whole season. He is that valuable at that point. You should just blow your whole budget. You are not going to find probably a better player in free agency for the rest of the year. Take your loss on every other player for the rest of the year. That would be like a strategy at that point. I bet
Yep.
you if you were to bet $80 and everyone else, you would not get him, even though you thought you gave a huge offer. That's how valuable someone that is, and how
Yep.
that's how these things work. It gets trickier though when it's not as obvious, like you said. There might be two different players. It might be a situation where one guy's going to go for 30, the other guy's going to go for 15, but then in 2 weeks, the $15 guy was the right call. So if you're the guy that picked up that person, then you're winning. So that's the strategy of it. You got to know each time, like, who do you think is the better one? Or maybe it's just you bid on both and you just hope to get one of the two.
Yep. Yeah, and there's chances to get a little bit of fab back. Even when you're out of fab too, you can still make moves. You just have to bid $0 on things. I was in that spot most of the season last year. I blew all my money by week 5, I believe. But I could still change my defense. I could still change my kickers when I wanted. When you're doing it with fab, the way you make sure you get a player is you have to put in a whole bunch of claims. So like, I don't have money to guarantee. I can't spend $2 to make sure I get the defense I want. I have 0. So if anyone puts in $1, or if they put in 0 and they're just higher in priority, they're going to get that player. So just strategy wise, to make sure you don't get stuck with no kicker or no defense or no whatever other position you might be in the situation of, is you find the player you want to drop and you set up a thing like, I'm going to drop Texas's defense and pick up the Jets defense. I set that up in my queue. The next thing I do is I drop Texas's defense for the Saints defense. I set that up in my queue. Then I set up third down. I drop Texas defense, pick up New England's defense. So you get like 3 or 4 of them, and that way, and you order them in the list you prefer them, but that way almost certainly at least one of them will go through, and you will have a starting play. Usually it's for defense or kickers, but that's how you get something that you want without dropping fab on it and not risking, shit, I didn't get them. My defense is on bye. Now I get 0 points in that spot.
Very, very important tip and something everyone should take advice from.
Yeah, I just thought I'd kick it out there because I feel like there were issues with that last year. Sometimes people didn't get a player, and it's like that's how you avoid those situations. So I guess that's all the advice I've got on fab. I mean, I'm not an expert. I did it last year, and I did it 1 year before in a different league, so I'm not an expert. As we do this more, I think you'll get to know. I think as we use this as a league with the same people, you'll kind of see how people spend. I'm sure there's going to be the people that blow it quickly, the people who are more conservative with it. You can do what you want with it, but as you play it out, you might realize like, oh, this person's going to blow it all early. So if you actually want somebody, you need to spend because they're going to spend more than you because they don't care if they're out of money by week 3. But we're not really to that point yet. We're only 1 year in, and last year was new for I think pretty much everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I've been playing fantasy football 20 years. I've done fab a handful of times. It is my preferred strategies because it's kind of unfair with the other way. And I won't even go into that because it's really not worth it. But fab is just the most balanced way to do it because everyone has the same chance. And it's nice because it adds a whole other strategy to it. And it makes the week to week stuff more fun. And then you also get a little bit more chatter and like talking back and forth because then people can be like, wow, you bid that much on that player. Or it's
Yeah.
like, haha, I beat you by $1. You get to kind of rub it in. I mean, you beat me for Achan by a couple dollars, I think, and then I believe you beat me for Puka Nakua. I was number 2 on him, and I should have bid more. And I think I bid like 20, you bid 30 or something like that. But like Puka
I spent a
Nakua
lot.
probably should have been like 50 or something. Yeah, maybe it was like 50.
I mean,
I remember being number 2.
looking back, Puka was worth $100.
Exactly.
If you know that's how the season is going to play out, blow the whole thing on him. If you knew that's what was going to happen, you don't know after week 1. After week 1, you only know he had a lot of targets, promising, and yeah, it's fun, and you can always see in the league. There's a setting somewhere you can see what everyone bid on people, not
Yep.
just the commission. Anybody can look. So after the waivers, after the fab thing runs tomorrow morning, you can look and see, I bid this, I won them. You can also see what other people bid. So you can see like, oh, did I spend $20 more than I have to, or was I just in the right spot where I barely got them? And it's interesting to see it. It's interesting to see how. For me, it was always like, yeah, I spent more than I needed to. People didn't bid as much as I thought they would, but if you want a guy, you got to, I don't know, spend what you think will get him for you.
And also, there's things too. Pay attention to who you're bidding for and who you think might be buying that same player.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if someone has Travis Kelce, they're probably not going to go for Isaiah Likely, at least not for a high amount. Why would they bid for a player they probably would never put on their starting roster unless Kelce was on his bye week? So that's a situation where you look at the other teams and you can be like, okay, I think like poor boy, he has
He has Goddard.
Goddard. Yeah, Goddard.
He used to
And
have.
Yeah, because I did that tight ends one.
Yeah,
But I
that
mean,
trade.
he's like that situation where it's like, okay, is it likely he's probably on the same level as Goddard, after week one? It's like, I think he might bid. So you got to think like, what would Kyle bid? And this might be more important later in the season when people have
Mhm.
different levels of fab. And then, like, say, like Kyle had 20 fab bucks left. I had 40, and I wanted a player that I know Kyle's going to want. I'm just going to bid 21 because I
Yep.
know he can't beat me. So you got to think of that stuff too. So that's another tip for fab budget.
Okay. So we've given our fab advice. Do we want to go over some waiver wire players and people will add? I'm not going to discuss what you should bid on these guys at all. I think that'll just be weird since we're in the league and we're kind of suggesting numbers to the league. So I'm just going to throw out names that are kind of on the people to look at going into week 2. The first one you already mentioned, Isaiah Likely. He was the bust out tight end this week, where most tight ends were just big old duds. So I feel like a lot of people are going to be eyeballing him. Like you said, Kelsey owners maybe not, Laporta owners maybe not, but like there weren't there weren't a lot of good tight ends this year. The ones that were good last year, like there weren't a lot of good tight ends this last week. And some of the ones that were drafted highly this year, they did good last year, but it's not like a career of performing like Kelsey or Mark Andrews, even Laporta. I mean, it was an awesome rookie season, but he doesn't have a career of this dude's always going to be getting this many touchdowns and this many passes.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, Isaiah Likely looked awesome. He looked great. The one thing I will say is Mark Andrews was double, triple covered almost that whole game. I mean, I think Andy Reid and the Chiefs, that was their target. Of you're not throwing it to Mark Andrews. We're not going to let you beat us in this way. And I think that's partially why Isaiah Likely was so open often. And a lot of his throws weren't deep. He's he's big, physical. He's fast. Like he made moves after the catch. Almost all of his yards were after the catch. They're mostly short yards, but he was good, and I don't think he's going away.
I think it's a couple things. I mean, it's similar to what we talked about JMO, right, with Amon and St. Brown, is that teams know who the good players are. They know when you play against the Lions, you have to shut down Amon St. Brown. If you're not shutting Amon St. Brown down, you're not stopping the Lions offense. That's the same thing with the Ravens offense, is that you're going into that, you need to shut down that tight end. I mean, he is one of the best tight ends in the league. So you need to take him out. So the Chiefs were very smart. They put all their resources on taking him out. And then Isaiah Likely, I don't think a lot of people realize that the Ravens are going to change their whole entire, I should say their entire offense, but they're running a different offense than they were last year. They were running 2 tight end sets. So they don't have a lot of good receivers. Their receivers are very, very thin. They don't have a very good number 3, number 4 guy.
Yeah,
Their number
they've got
2 guy
Zay
is not even that great.
Flowers. That's pretty much it, really.
Right. So Isaiah Likely is probably more like their number 3 receiver is what they're showing you week 1. So he's going to have up and down games, and teams are going to look at shutting down certain players, and then maybe Likely will have a big game. But the thing is, you probably just saw Isaiah Likely's best game of the season. So the odds are him having a game that good again are very slim. So be careful with those type of guys and what you might bid on.
Yeah.
You don't know
I'd
what you're
also
getting.
say, in my opinion, if you're Mark Andrews owners, I wouldn't panic over that. I don't think Isaiah Likely's taking his job. It will hurt production, but I think Mark Andrews is still the tight end to own there.
I think it's the same
Um,
thing as if they had another receiver on the field. I
yeah,
don't think it really impacts them too much. I think they're both going to be valuable. It's going to be kind of like the Gronk and Hernandez situation that the
yep,
Patriots in early in their careers. Is that Gronk was obviously the alpha, but Aaron Hernandez, R.I.P. He wasn't the greatest, or he was great in his own way, and they did complement each other the same way we're seeing here with the Ravens tight ends. But they were both very fantasy relevant. I think Andrews would go, or Gronk would go early rounds, and then Hernandez would probably go in like the 5th, 6th round. But that's crazy. Most tight ends go in the 5th, 6th round for the draft, like
yeah.
5th, 6th tight ends in the league. So you can definitely support 2 tight ends, and the Ravens are going to.
Well, I'm sure they're going to be this year. Yeah. Um, Another player of note this week, we got Tank Bigsby, Jaguars running back. He was a rookie last year. I don't know if he got drafted in our league. He got drafted in a lot of leagues. He was kind of suspected to be taking over the role, but man, he was not good last year. I mean, he was irrelevant last year. He just didn't get used. Travis Etienne was good, and Tank Bigsby never got a look really. I mean, I think he did the week one last year, and he fumbled. He wasn't good, so that was kind of the end of his opportunity. But yeah, this year he looks like he's getting a second chance, and so far he's doing something with it. He looked good.
So that really comes down to one thing is that I always like to look at, you got to look at Travis Etienne wasn't drafted by the current regime that is in Jacksonville. That wasn't the player that they maybe even liked at that spot. They might think he's a good player, but again, they didn't draft him. They had no part of his acquisition to that team. They brought in Tank Bigsby. They seemed to like him. They gave him a lot more carries than I think a lot of people expected. Last year, he was kind of like a guy that people did like in preseason. They thought, oh, maybe he could be something if Travis Etienne got injured. Well, now we're a year later, and the conversation, he might take Travis Etienne's job potentially. I mean, I don't know if it's crazy or that crazy yet. I think Travis Etienne's a good player in his own right, but he's definitely looked like he's going to have standalone value. They're going to give him carries in meaningful parts of the game, and they're going to probably be more of a split backfield. Travis Etienne probably being the one there, and Bigsby being like the 1B, but Bigsby seems like he's going to be a rostable player and a player that could even become much more valuable if Travis Etienne does get injured.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if he has another game with that kind of performance, I don't see how he gets relegated to the back burner again. It'll be a split backfield, and if you think the Jaguars can have a good offense like they're supposed to have had for the last couple of years, it could be a valuable backfield, even if you get 50% of it. I mean, most running backs in fantasy are in split backfields now, so it's not like it's not even that big of a downgrade to be a 50% back. It's so uncommon that you actually get something more than that nowadays.
Yeah, every running backfield is going to be split in some other. There's hardly anybody that gets so.
Well, another one, Jordan Mason. This is a interesting one. I mean, he had an awesome, fantastic week against the Jets defense. The Niners just seemed to run the ball at will against them, and the Jets were supposed to be a good defense. Maybe they're not. Maybe it was week one, so they weren't gelling as a defensive unit yet. I don't know, but it seemed like it didn't matter who was the running back there. It was the Niners. It was a good system. It's Shanahan. They're going to run the ball lots. He likes to give it to one guy, and that guy is Jordan Mason last week. Looks like it will be Jordan Mason next week. The problem with him is when McCaffrey's back, he's relegated to 0 points in fantasy the rest until McCaffrey's out again. It's a hard one to judge what to do with, to me.
Yeah, I mean, the value there is insane, though. The top end of his value. I mean, if McCaffrey ends up missing a lot of games, you're getting what looks to be a really solid starter. Maybe a guy, if he was there all year and you knew he was going to start, he would have probably been like a second. So you're thinking of crazy value when he is playing. He's a very valuable player. But like you said, McCaffrey will likely be back soon. And then he becomes not even playable because at that point, he's not going to be making any points because talked about running back fields that do have 90% carries on one player. It's going to be McCaffrey. He's that type of player. So he's definitely a good player. He's going to be someone worth picking up, and he's going to be someone that you're going to love starting for the next week or two. And then you're going to have him on your bench until you see McCaffrey get injured. If McCaffrey gets injured, you are rewarded very highly.
All right, and then the last one we've got down here is Demarcus Robinson. Rams wide receiver. Basically, it's a next guy up after Puka's out because Puka's gonna be gone for a while, like we were saying earlier in the show. It might be week 7, might be after their bye until he comes back. And in the meantime, Kupp can't get every single throw on that team. It can't happen that way. Someone else has to catch some balls. Stafford's good. That offense is fantastic. you assume someone else will get some action there. So if you're looking for a wide receiver, Demarcus Robinson is a name to to glance over at.
Yeah, I mean, we start 3 receivers and a flex, which typically ends up being a receiver because that's just there's more startable players at receiver than there's running back. So, the receiver market's gonna be thin in our free agency, but there's going to be
Always
players
is.
every one now and then that are valuable, and maybe that's Demarcus Robinson. You know, he's gonna be the number 2 for a while, and you're pairing up him with a great quarterback in Stafford, and that's typically what you want. You want a guy who might not be the most talented. You're not carrying as much because you know he's going to be with a great quarterback. That quarterback can make him look better than he is. And Demarcus Robinson has history with Mahomes and some other top quarterbacks, and has had some solid seasons. So you're getting a veteran that you know could put up 800 yards, 7 touchdowns by the end of the year, and that's startable situations.
That's all I got for waiver wire players. Anyone else you got to throw out there? Or are we all wrapped up on that section?
I mean, don't just listen to the players we're listing. We're just kind of
There's
showing
way more.
obvious ones. There's going to be a couple running backs, a couple receivers, a couple tight ends, and you got to remember you got your kickers and defenses that you got to be alternating between. So there's a lot of players out there. We just wanted to highlight the very obvious ones and kind of explain free agency and just kind of let you know what you want to do when you're targeting
Mhm.
set players.
All right. And on that note, let's roll on into the week 1 recap. We got our matchup results here. I'll start with my match. I played against Richard. I lost quite handily. I pretty much got spanked across the board. There's really no outstanding spots that I even have to note on mine. I started the Bengals D against the New England offense, which I thought would be just a great streaming defense to start off, and apparently the Bengals suck and they can make New England's offense look good. So that was painful. I don't know. I don't have much to say on that matchup. Anything noteworthy for you?
I mean, it's just week 1 is hard to predict, and a lot of players have high variance in the first couple weeks because teams are still trying to figure it out. So, I mean, it's hard to. I mean, for one, fantasy is just a hard thing to predict. You got the whole injury side of it,
Yeah.
all that. But as far as the teams go, I mean, nothing's really surprising here. I mean, it's just the game's kind of unfolded certain ways. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, it was a low scoring game, and they kind of just found other ways to score. So he had a down game. Metcalf again. I think Denver's is such a bad team that Seattle kind of knew they could coast a little bit. The game was pretty close, but Denver was just not a team they had to throw and keep up with. So that hurt their receiving. And yeah, that's just the life of fantasy football, unfortunately.
Yep. Doesn't always roll the way you want.
Right.
So yeah, I start off with the L, 0-1. Next match we had Tiff versus Lee. At the time that I wrote this up, McCaffrey was yet to play, but I'd already assumed Tiff was going to win because she was up by I think 40 some points, and even the almighty McCaffrey doesn't get 40 points too often. Turns out McCaffrey didn't play. Lee lost by quite a bit. Notes for that one: Josh Allen just absolutely fucking dominated. He's putting this whole goddamn team on his back to win that game. Crazy. Um, every year I don't draft Josh Allen. I'm like, why the fuck don't I just draft this guy? It, it's insane what he does.
Yeah, I mean he's one of, if
Yeah.
not the best.
Um, we had a kicker score 4 field goals and 3 extra points. Gotta love kickers, just racking up your points for you. And then we had the Chiefs D started against the Ravens in that matchup, which once again, you got a good D, but you're against a good offense. Not always the best idea to stick with your strong defensive unit against good teams because good teams will find a way to get points on you, and then your legitimately good NFL defense winds up being bad in fantasy when that happens.
Yeah, I mean it's a situation too. Like fantasy's hard to predict. You got Lee sitting there with his number 1 overall pick, the best player in fantasy football last year, Christian McCaffrey, and everything says that he's going to play, and then you wait for him because that's your bell cow of your team. Like he's going to carry your team all year, and then you find out on Monday that he's not going to play.
It's made
Luckily,
worse
it
when it's a
wasn't a
Monday
complete.
night game. Like even if, I mean, he could have got Jordan Mason, I guess, on Sunday when the waivers were in. He could have got it, but there was definitely no suggestion that he was not going to play. Like nobody did that because
Right.
everything would suggest that he was playing.
Yeah, that's a hard one. So I'm glad for him, and the game wasn't that close. Like you said, Tiffany's team just kind of went off. I mean, her kicker scored more points than I think anyone on Glee's team. So, oh
That
no,
kicker scored
everyone
more
but
than
makes it.
most players in fantasy this week. That yeah,
Yeah, I mean
that's
that's what happens.
kickers. That's kickers. That I mean that feel like that happens every week. One of the kickers does that. You just hope you're
Yep,
not against that particular kicker.
and you never know who it's going to be.
Yep. Up next we had you versus Mike. You pulled this one out. Like you said, it was a comeback win. It was not looking good for you on most of the way through Sunday, but Sunday night you pulled it, you eked it out and did it. Joe Burrow opened the season up very poorly for Mike. That's a rough way to start off with a quarterback getting barely any points. You had Jameson Williams breakout game. Was he in your starting lineup, Jameson Williams? I didn't actually look when I wrote this.
Like as far as like all like from my draft, like he was intended to be there.
No, was he in your line? Like he got points for your
Yeah.
team. He wasn't on your bench.
No, yeah, I started
Oh,
him.
okay, okay.
I
Yeah,
drafted him with the
that was a
intention
good
of
call.
starting.
Yeah, good call. Because that worked out extremely well for you.
Yeah. I'm pretty happy with it.
Yeah. On the flip side, on a bad call, you had Drake London. Tell you how you feeling about your Falcons being good this year. You still high on that, or is Week 1 change in your mind? Or you're
I mean,
still leaving
that
it
was a rough
undecided
game.
for now?
I think we're still seeing maybe Kirk Cousins not fully back to health. Probably good enough to play. Probably better than most quarterbacks still in the league. Even though he's injured, but I think comes with that is can't maybe do everything he needs to do, and then you go against maybe the best defensive player. I mean, I'm not gonna say maybe. I think you're going against the best defensive player in the league right now, in JJ Watt or TJ Watt. Sorry,
He's the
and
best at pressuring quarterbacks for sure.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think when you got your quarterback that you're not sure is 100% against the best pass rusher in the league, and you got to figure out a way to avoid getting that player injured, your quarterback injured. So I think they played a lot of shotgun and pistol, trying to keep him further back from the center, try to give him more time. And I think he's just not mobile enough yet to really deal with someone of TJ Watt's caliber. And I think TJ Watt kind of just took over the game. So hopefully there's better days to come. But as of right now, yeah, that's a little concerning. That was a bad game. But again, it's week 1, it's week 2. These things happen. So I'm not down on him on a level where like, oh no, everything's going to go that shit now. I'm still pretty confident in my Falcons take. I think they're going to be a really good team this year.
You say that, but Jackie showed me a trade you sent her where it looked like you were trying to unload all of your Falcons players.
To be fair,
I was like, Jim must not be that high on the Falcons anymore. It's
uh, to be fair, I probably sent half the league trades and multiple trades at that. I really want to try to get people to trade more. So I
Mhm.
went around and I was just sending trade offers. I've been talking with Scooter for like 2 days on potentially making a deal, and it would be a pretty big trade. So I'm not sure if he's going to do it, but we're talking about like some Cooper Cup, Derrick Henry swapping, and some other stuff. Like I
Okay.
just want to try to offer trades. I'm probably gonna be doing it all year because I just want to get that in the motion. I want people to get used to trading. We talked about
Yeah.
it during the draft that people weren't trading. Well, the best way to trade is just to keep sending them. The worst thing you can do is just close it. I sent some good trades. I sent some bad trades. I sent a trade that to Richard that I was like, I looked at it when he canceled. I'm like, why did he even send that? That was a terrible trade because when you're trying to make a trade, the one thing, and I'll even use Jackie and Poorboy as an example, you don't want to trade the same position for the same position. Like, there's no point in that because it's really, you're going to have a winner and loser no matter what. Really, what a trade should be, it should be helping both teams. So if you have a really strong receiver core and you don't have good running backs, and there's another team with really good running backs and a bad receiving core, you guys probably should make a trade. You probably should swap a running back for a receiver, and then you make both teams better.
Yep.
And
You,
that's what my focus was. So if I did send a bad trade, I apologize, but it's this thing where I'm going to keep sending trades, and we're going to make it more fun, hopefully, and see some more action this year.
say this too. We all have each other's phone numbers. If someone sends you a trade, you don't have to straight up. I mean, you can just decline it, but you can also say, "There's something here that I like, but I don't want to do this." You can text the person and say, "Hey, I'm not giving you him for, I'm not doing that trade straight up, but if you want to throw this player on the table, maybe we could talk. There's ways to make trades happen, even if you don't like the original thing. Um, so yeah, I mean, if Jim sends you a trade and you're like, I don't like it, but I do like that one player he offered me. What if I can get him and give you this plus this, or you can shift things around. It doesn't have to be the original thing thrown to you that you have to just click accept on.
Right. You might have two running backs that are very similar in value, and the person's trying to trade with them, and you really like one of them more than the other one, and they offer you
Hmm.
a trade for the one you liked, and you're like, well, I don't want to make that trade. But if you would take the other one, I'll do
Yeah,
it. And maybe the other person looks the exact opposite, and they're like, oh,
yeah,
that's actually the guy I want. I didn't think you would trade him. That's
yeah.
something that
And you don't know until you message the person. So just
everyone looks at it differently.
yep. Um, okay, so that was your matchup. Then we had Scooter versus Poor. Scoots pulled it off. Poor's got a loss in his column. Uh, Anthony Richardson. That was a it was an interesting game. That one throw he had was the throw of the week, throw of the season. He just bombed it 60 yards down the field after almost falling on his almost tripping. That was something. Uh, Cooper Cup. I mean, he looked absolutely dominant with Puka out. That's going to be something if they keep doing that. If they go back to like that 2022 season, that's the value of the draft right there. Probably getting Cup that late. They didn't even
Yeah.
go that late, but man, if he keeps that up, he was worth like pick 3. Um, Tyreek Hill, almost arrested before the game, comes in, does his Tyreek Hill thing where he's just too fast for anyone to keep up with. Just gets gets the ball, makes one guy miss, and he's just fucking gone. Um, I kind of note about this too. Just the fast dudes in the NFL nowadays. It seemed like it was their week. Jameson Williams kind of one of them too. Just it wasn't like the middling guys. It was like the fast dudes just streaking down the field, getting points this week. Xavier Worthy did it too on the Chiefs. Just all the fast dudes flying around getting big touchdowns. Not a lot of catches, but a lot
Typically,
of
the fast
yards.
guys are the ones that take the most communication, and communication
Yeah,
comes first early in the week because the safety and the corner have to be kind of on the same page for those guys because they have to kind of trade off. Like, okay, this is your coverage now. You got to this point, but until you get to week 5 or 6, the communication between those players isn't that great unless they've been
yeah,
playing for years. They might not look at the same way. So I do think fast guys and more explosive players typically perform early and then rather as much late. So you're going to see some big plays from those
yeah.
continue for a while.
Yeah, I didn't think about it that way, but that does make sense. Yeah, one little slip up against guys like that, and you're torched.
I mean, you
Um,
mentioned JMO, that guy
yeah, yep,
juke and he was gone, and there was no way you're catching him.
yeah. And then the last note I had for their matchup was Stephon Diggs on the Texans. He looked great. I did not think he was going to be that good this year. He looked fantastic. You think he's the wide receiver one on the Texans now, or you think he's two? Think it's just going to be a split? They all had about equal targets, but Diggs was the guy in the red zone. They went to him.
I mean, touchdowns are pretty random, so it's hard to always gauge on that. He didn't have a lot of yards, but again, if he was being used more in the red zone, that's probably the reason for that. I didn't watch the game personally, so I can't really comment on how valuable those targets were. I mean, if they threw a bunch of like screens to him, 6 catches, 33 yards isn't really that impressive until you add the 2 touchdowns. So it's hard to say. But Nico Collins, I mean, that guy's really good. And then I think it just comes down to CJ Stroud's probably the next great quarterback, the next great young quarterback. So he's probably going to make 3 or 4 players fantasy relevant in the passing game. So, I mean, even if he's not quote unquote the number one option, he's still going to be probably a number 2 option on your team for fantasy. That's valuable on its own.
Yeah. I mean, that was kind of my thought too. Is I think all those guys are going to be good. The biggest issue is they can all have because they're all so good. They can all have just bad weeks because it's not their week. They get the wrong coverage on the wrong guy. They're like, well, we'll just ignore you this week and we'll use the other guys. My only issue with Diggs is he's gotten dropped by 2 teams, so I'm just curious if he becomes that guy in weeks, uh, if he's gonna make an issue out of it.
I mean, he even straight up said he's the reason why he left both teams. He got sick
Yeah,
or something. So, I mean, I think he's kind of a head case. So, as far as talent, one of the better receivers in the league. So,
yep,
he might be good for the Texans for a year or two, but then who knows once he starts getting annoyed and pissed off and then moves on to the next one, or maybe he just retires at that point.
yeah. Well, I'm just curious if it happens. several weeks in a row where he's the defense zoning on him, and CJ Stroud's like, all right, I got Tank, I got Nico, we'll go with them if
Yeah.
Diggs is gonna make a big deal about it, or if he'll be happy that his team's winning. We'll see. It's too early to tell. I'm sure he's happy to be on a good team for now. We had Jackie versus Tiff. Notes I have for this one: Goff didn't have a fantastic game throwing. Lions kind of ran a lot. I mean, he did have those deep ones to JMO, but outside of that, wasn't a lot of quarterback action there.
It's hard to miss JMO when he's 20 yards
I mean,
away from the closest defender. I mean, he underthrew
yeah.
JMO actually on the touchdown. JMO just kind of was he could pretty much pinpoint the ball and go grab it.
Well,
Return from him.
when you're that open, sometimes you don't really have to. Sometimes you just chuck it in the vicinity, being like, all right, I don't need to pinpoint this. It doesn't matter. The dude's
right. You're
dude's
taking and being precautious because you know it's a touchdown as long as
yeah,
you're in like a 10-yard radius.
yeah, exactly. We had Saquon Barkley. We kind of mentioned this earlier. He just went absolutely fucking bananas. Just dominated. Makes me wish I'd had him. Looks like he might be the running back of the year. Not much more to say about him. We already talked about it. Also, Amon Ra. We kind of talked about this already. He wasn't present this game, but we both don't really think it's an issue. Then we had Brock Bowers for Jackie, which you traded for Dallas Goedert. So after 1 week, Jackie's winning that trade by 3 points, which is pretty negligible. Neither one was great. I will. Brock Bowers might be something. It's a shitty offense, but he might be something. Well, time will tell on that one. Dallas Goedert, I think he is what we know he is, which isn't spectacular.
Comes down to, I think we already know what Dallas Goedert's going to be. I mean, he's going to be probably around the 7th or 10th number tight end at the end of the year. I mean, he doesn't really. I mean, he's proven what he is. Brock Bowers can be anything. He could be Dallas Goedert, right? But no, he could be much more than Dallas Goedert, but he could be a lot worse. So we'll see. Yeah, week 1, he looked pretty solid.
It was an interesting trade. It was like a gamble trade. He took a known commodity, but a known middling commodity, and traded it for a wild card of he might be good, he might suck, but it looked pretty promising. He got quite a few targets for being a rookie. His first game in as a tight end. Yeah, and then we had Ashley versus Carson's. They had Justin Herbert in that game. Looks like that team wants to run the ball. They were not passing often. A whopping 144 yards of thrown production. I think it's just a result of the matchup of a easy team and a lead early on, or you think that's a thing?
I mean, you have Jim Harbaugh, who would rather win a game 3-0 than probably any other score. So it's hard to say. I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to is just they don't have the talent around Herbert. It kind of reminds me a little bit in the way when the Lions rebuilt in their first season with Goff after they traded Stafford. They didn't really have any receiver talent next to him. They had to build all the receiving core you see today over a couple drafts. I think that's the same thing you're going to see with the Chargers. Is I think they're trying to kind of. I mean, if you ask them deep down, they're going to tell you they're not going to win Super Bowl this year. They know it. They're not dumb. They're going to try to be competitive, but what they're going to do is they kind of had to reallocate the resources. They have a brand new team, and they're putting those resources in a certain way. Well, what they did is they're like, all right, we're going to build our offensive line. We'll worry about the skill positions next year. We're going to build from the trenches. We're going to build our defense up. That's kind of the mentality of Jim Harbaugh. He's going to build a tough-minded, rugged team that wins off of offensive line playing defense, kind of what the Lions are doing right now. So I think you're going to see in the next couple of years, you're going to have a lot more talent there. But yeah, for this year, it's going to possibly be a rocky road. They don't have the receiver talent for him to put up the craziest stats. So, that was a game where it was close, or it was a kind of more of like a blowout. So that's part of it. But you're going to probably see more of that if they feel like they're confident and they're ahead. They're probably not going to throw a lot because they don't necessarily probably trust the receivers to throw that much.
Yeah, it worries me if I'm a Justin Herbert owner, which I am in one league. I don't like it. I don't think they're gonna throw much, unless they absolutely have to. And like you said, the receiving skill isn't there. So if they get in that spot, even then, I don't see it being super great. Up next, notable in the matchup, we had Mike Evans get 2 touchdowns and a bunch of yards. Dude just won't ever quit. Just every year he's gonna have a whole bunch of touchdowns and 1,000 yards, and he'll be in the Hall of Fame. I don't know what else to say about him. Every year you think it can't keep happening, but it does keep happening.
Yeah, he's one of the best receivers I've ever seen. I'm surprised he doesn't get more talk for how good he is. He's longevity. He's got that. I think he's the only receiver in NFL history to have 1,000 yard receiving in each of his seasons. I don't know if that broke that yet. I think
Yeah. Oh yeah, he's got that record. It's like 10
so.
seasons in a row. Something stupid.
Something stupid, yeah. No one's ever done it. And he said he's got 2 touchdowns because he's 6'5". I mean, he's a huge red zone target. He's always good for like 10 touchdowns. Yeah, he's never like the number one receiver ever in the league, but he's always steady around that, like kind of hovering around that top 10 area. And you just
Yeah.
know what you're going to get from him. And yeah, I think that longevity plus just always being in that area and always being reliable and consistent, he's going to be a Hall of Famer for it.
Yep. Next I had Jaden Reed. He dominated. He looked like Packers' #1 wide receiver. I was off on this. Maybe we'll see if it continues. Like I said, it's week 1. I did not think he'd be the #1 in the Packers, but he definitely looked like it was. Looked like Love liked him the best. Looks like LaFleur likes him the most. I mean, they schemed for him, and the catches, yards, and touchdowns showed up on because of it. Um, that's an interesting one because now Jordan Love's out for a while. I don't know how good any of the Packers wide receivers are going to be with the backup. My guess is not good. I think the only player that gets a boost from that is Josh Jacobs, and even that, not much of a boost because there's just going to be less scoring. But it was interesting to watch that game. It was interesting to watch him. He looked pretty damn good.
And if you talk to Lee, that's actually Jaden Tyreek Hill Reed, which is his full name, I believe.
Yeah. Then we had Mark Andrews, highly drafted tight end, kind of stinking it up. He didn't do much. We kind of talked about that already. Then we had Pollard. Yeah, who was it? Pollard and someone else. We were kind of talking about that last week. They were splitting carries, but it looks like
Yeah.
Pollard's the dude. Got more snaps, got more yards, more everything. I mean, it did not look like a 1A, 1B. It looked like a 1 and a 2 for sure.
Yeah, coaches lie. They say things like
Yeah.
that all the time, and then once you get to game time, then that's when you show what they actually are trying to do, and that's what it came down to. I think Pollard, they paid a lot of money for him. He was a pretty solid player in Dallas. He was injured last year, so I think that kind of tanked his value a little bit. So right now, he looks like you put him down as running back 1. He definitely is running back 1 for week 1.
Yep.
He might not stay that way, but as of right now, you should be pretty happy if you drafted him.
Yeah. There's the matchups. It was a great first week, other than the fact that I lost and the Packers lost. But everyone's got to lose one at least. We'll see how the rest of the season plays out. And
You've had it all. You've had fantasy success over the last 10 years. You've had your team have like actual NFL success. It's my turn. I have one of those things. I need the other. So I want to experience it all at once. And I didn't play well in fantasy last year, so it's my turn.
hopefully it stays cooking for you then.
I'm working on it.
Uh, Anything else you want to talk about this week, or should we wrap her up on that? We don't have a bet
Um,
yet. We got to bet on something.
I got a bet. I think I just still want to kind of chime in on the trade thing. We talked about it in the draft. I really want people to. I mean, obviously, we don't want to force people to do things they don't want to do, but I'd love to see people trade more. I'd love to see more interaction week to week. Can't go into a season thinking like your team is set. You might run into situations like I talked about before where you have more running backs than you have receivers. I know I saw one person's team and they had like 5 starting running backs and they had maybe one receiver that I would probably start on my team. It's like that person should be right now offering people a running back for a receiver straight up. Just see what you can get. It doesn't hurt. You're gonna probably get turned down a bunch, but until we get people talking more, we're not gonna have that. So again, I know some people in the league probably just don't want to trade. I know there's people in this league that are against trading, but if you want to have a little more fun, I recommend trying it. I was actually having a lot of fun just throwing offers at people and just seeing what I could potentially get and just
Yeah.
thinking about it. So I'm going to keep sending trades to people, good or bad. Cancel them. Like Kyle said, you can even look right in the ESPN app. You can communicate with the person right where the trade is. You can just literally talk to them in that little blurb. So you can try to haggle with people. You can talk about different offers if they send you something. Just feel like it. The worst thing that
It,
can happen is they say no.
I will say there's also things on ESPN like if there's a player, if there's a player on your team that you don't want or are considering trading, you can mark them as like on the trade block. And there's also a thing where if there's someone on someone else's team, you can mark it as that you're interested in them, and the player can see that. So if I mark someone on Jim's team, I can mark like I'm interested in this player. He can see that and say, "Oh, okay, Kyle wants Jamison Williams. What am I willing to? What does he have that I might want?" So it's a good way to kick off a trade talk if you
Yeah,
want to trade. I will say too, though, it's only week one. Like it's sometimes you want to see how your Flyers pan out for a week or two. Be like, all right, did I make the right call? All right, did I not? I don't want to overreact to anything that happened in week one. Maybe I'll wait till week two to see if I think if what I believed in the draft is still true. It,
yeah.
Trading before week one or right after week one, I can see why people are more hesitant. The season just started. You don't really know what you have yet, and everything's a mystery. Um,
It makes it all the more fun because you're literally
yeah, it's more
trading
of a
things that you
gamble.
have no clue about, and one person's probably gonna be really wrong, and the other person's gonna be really right. Or maybe you both just like I said, if you trade a running back for a receiver and both teams benefit, maybe at the end of the year, you guys both are in the playoffs because of that trade.
Yeah,
So trades are very valuable to everyone involved, and both teams can improve. It's not a one-way street. I think that's what a lot of people think. It's just like, oh, I'm gonna make a trade. I'm scared that I'm gonna lose a good player. No, you could both be improving your teams. So wouldn't you want to have a better team? I do.
yep. Um, okay. So yeah, what's our bet gonna be this week? You want to bet on a game? You want to bet on a? We got any good matchups in fantasy this week?
Um, I don't know, bet on the Packer game.
Who are
Think
the
they're gonna
Packers
win?
playing? Who are they playing?
Is that too rough? Who do they play?
I don't know. Is it the Titans? No, it's.
If it's the Titans, maybe it's worth betting.
You know, we bought tickets for the game against Arizona on October 13th. And if Jordan Love's not back for that game, I'm gonna be pretty fucking pissed off. 'Cause they were expensive. And I bet you if I looked right now, they'd be like half the price we paid because Jordan Love's hurt.
Oh yeah,
We play the Colts. Can the Packers beat the Colts at home without Jordan Love? Uh,
this is on you. I'll
God, our
make the bet.
backup is. I don't even
That's
know the backup's name. He's. But I remember him in Tennessee. He was so fucking bad. I don't even
Malik
know why
Willis.
he's on our roster.
Malik Willis,
Malik Willis, yeah.
Houston quarterback.
Sure, I'll take it. It's just a shot at Malort, right?
All right, yeah, it's not.
One shot on Packers winning.
Yeah, I'm gonna
All
take
right.
the Anthony Richardson Colts.
Yeah. Don't blame you. That's probably where the smart money is. And I assume the Packers are
Yeah,
underdogs in that
I'm already
game, but
down one. We'll have to do like a count so we know how many we have and see who won at the end.
oh yeah, I should keep track of these somewhere.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah.
I do have one other thing I thought of
Yeah.
today. So our original bet for the year is not looking too hot for you.
I mean,
And I
that's a
feel
pretty
like
big wrench in the plan. Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be if we can win some games while Love's out, we still got a chance at the division. But man, that sucks. Miss a even a fifth or a quarter of the season.
I mean, you're basically probably hoping like Goff gets injured for a couple games at this point. I don't think you're getting caught. You're catching up at all. The Lions are going to be a 10+ win team. I think you can't even the biggest doubters have to think the Lions are around 10 wins.
I mean, at this point, I'm hoping we don't dig ourselves a big enough hole that we can't make the playoffs.
Right.
That's my hope right now. Not so much
So
winning the division anymore.
I don't want to take my win off of that, right? So right now I'm pretty much. I bet you Lions have like a 90% chance to outpace the Packers, and I think we should make it kind of interesting. And we should make the bet switch to if the Packers can beat the Lions 2 times this year. And I say that because the Lions and Packers play the last game of the season. So if the Lions are the number one team in the division, they might be benching and resting players. So this could be a situation if the Lions are good enough. The Packers just need to beat in one game because they'll probably get a win second game no matter what.
So what if they split 1-1 then?
Then I still win.
Oh, so you're giving me like a bit of an out.
Yeah,
Okay,
because I don't
I'll
want to
take
just
it.
have it like, oh, okay, you just lost your starting quarterback for 3 weeks, and you probably already are looking up on the Lions at that. It's just that's going to be tough to come back and Lions
But I
win.
mean, if the Packers beat the Lions twice, there's a good chance. There's a better chance then, 'cause that's 2 losses for them.
Yeah.
That puts us in a better shot to also win the
Well, I'm
division.
saying you can have both bets. I mean, because
Okay.
really, it's going to happen one way or the other. If you guys win, but I feel like I said, even if the Lions are really good, it kind of gives you an out too because it's
Yeah.
like the
I don't know if
Packers could just surprise the Lions mid-season once Love comes back. So you guys play
they
us
did
pretty
last year.
and then you got the final game of the season. If the Lions only had 3 losses and they're resting all their players, and the Packers are trying to compete for a playoff spot, those are the type of games you pretty much your team wins no matter what. It's pretty hard to lose those games. So like you kind of almost have a situation where you might have a pretty good shot at winning 2 games if the Lions are as good as I think they're going to be.
You think they'll have everything locked up by the end of the season? That's pretty bold.
I think they're
Think
going
they'll
to
like home field advantage locked up for the NFC.
well, obviously those things could play differently. I mean, there might be like the Niners might be a game or two ahead of them, and they might just be number 2. And they're not going to play anybody, right? And I'm not saying they're going to be the number 1 team. I'm just saying they might rest their players. It's one of those things now. The way it works.
Yeah, sometimes your
Yeah.
position is already locked even if you're not number one. Like you
So
can't improve.
I'm just saying that there's a pretty good chance, if the Lions are as good as again how I feel they're going to be, that you're going to be almost given a free win. I believe.
I mean, I'll take it. I'll take the little bit of extra odds. That's
And I'll
I
just make
was
it a
fine.
little.
I was fine honoring as it was. I mean, it sucks that your quarterback gets hurt week one. It kind of fucks the whole bet up. But
Yeah. And
yeah,
that's not.
I'll
I
take
don't want to.
the slightly increased odds.
All right.
Anything else for this week? Or we wrapping her up there?
I think I'm good. I think we had a
Okay.
good podcast. I think we improved a little bit on what we had previous week, and hopefully we
Yeah.
can just keep adding to it and making this an enjoyable hour-long listen for
Yeah.
people.
A little more format this time. A little more experience. It can only go. It can only go up. All right. Well, on that note, we'll wrap her up. Call her a day. Thanks everyone for listening. This will probably get posted Thursday morning. I gotta edit this up. And then going forward, I meant to ask you about this. Do you want to do Tuesdays going forward?
Yeah, I think Tuesdays would make more sense for the free
Okay.
agency.
Yeah, darts is over now, so I got Tuesday nights free. And that way we can get it. Games will be over. We can talk Tuesday. I can upload it Wednesday so people can actually listen before the game start on Thursday. Yeah, okay. That's what we'll plan
Okay,
going forward.
good to me.
All right. Well, Jim, thanks for joining me. Thanks for chopping it up about football again this week.
Excellent. I was waiting for you.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for listening. Good luck in fantasy this week. Have fun, and we'll talk to you next week.